Today, I want to deep dive the conversation around backwards compatibility for Nintendo Switch 2 following all of the recent reports that more or less confirm this thing. You can debate it in the comment section down below. Let me know if you don't think it's going to have backwards compatibility, but I'm pretty much sold in the mindset that it will, not only from a business perspective, and that's some of what I'm going to be unpacking in this video with how Nintendo knows what they've created with the Nintendo Switch and how they want to roll that forward and create some evergreen titles that will continue to sell. And we've even seen that in their presentations and slides to their investors, which we're going to look at a few of those. But I also believe that following this information that Pioro has heard, stating it in a tweet that information like this was being divulged to accessory partners ahead of these separate sources like Vandel and also MobaPad, now just straight out saying some of the features of this upcoming console from Nintendo. We also had that interview from the Ubisoft CEO where he regretted releasing Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope on the current Switch and legitimately stated that they will continue to update the game and sell it on the future console in hope to capitalize on more sales from a better version or a updated version of the game, highly insinuating that we will see backwards compatibility as a feature. And now you just have straight up reports that the cartridge slot, it will fit Switch 1 games and your entire digital library is supported as well. So we'll get on the same page with all of the exact details on why this makes all the sense in the world for Nintendo to do this time around with the Switch 2 and backwards compatibility. But before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first start off by tackling the conversation of where we're at with the Switch today in terms of unit sales. As of the last financial briefing, Nintendo has officially updated the Switch sales numbers to 139.36 million units with 1.2 billion pieces of software sold for the console. It's historically going to go down as Nintendo's most successful console ever. Now, it does need to knock off the DS in terms of total lifetime unit sales. I am confident it will do that relatively soon, and it will have to go a little bit further than that to knock off the best-selling console of all time, period, which is the PS2, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the software success with the Nintendo Switch and kind of the evergreen sales that come from some of these games. We've seen slides like the following that are on screen from Nintendo in their investors briefings where they say series titles on Nintendo Switch are growing bigger. They show Mario Kart 8, of course, the juggernaut that continues to sell. It's over 60 million units now, but at the time of this slide, they clearly point out that it was at 57.01 million, and that's compared to 37 million units sold of Mario Kart Wii, which was their previous most successful Mario Kart title. That is a massive increase. Animal Crossing, 43.38 million units sold on Nintendo Switch, upping its 13 million sold from the 3DS. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, 32.44 million, all the way up from 13 million of Smash Bros. Brawl on the Wii. Mario Odyssey, same story, 26.95 million as opposed to its previous most successful Galaxy on the Wii at 12.80. The Legend of Zelda slide that they put out is the perfect example of Nintendo's mindset around selling games over the course of a long-term cycle and why when it doesn't die off, don't let it die off, continue to sell it. And they're selling these things at full retail price most of the time outside of an occasional holiday sale, mind you, and you have The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild at 30.15 million copies sold. That is up from 7.5 million of Twilight Princess on the Wii. And you also have them highlighting that it is a long seller, meaning that not only did Tears of the Kingdom come out at almost 20 million copies like immediately, but you have the first fiscal year post-release sales at 8.49, and then you have 22 million units slowly sold over the course of time afterwards. All of that said, Nintendo knows that they are at a point in history where a lot of their games have legs to them, and they will continue to sell. Look at Super Mario Bros. Wonder, an excellent masterpiece of a 2D Mario experience. I don't think that game has even close to tapped into the level of sales that it will one day perform up to, and you would naturally want to be able to sell that to new users that are getting the Nintendo Switch 2 for the first time. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is a fan-beloved classic, and it has some controversy surrounding it right now. I don't think that it's the game that you need to get all worked up about it running at 30 frames per second instead of 60 like it did on the GameCube. It is a remake, not a remaster. Nintendo's branding it and marketing it as such, but we are at a point of limitation on the Nintendo Switch console with what you can do when in terms of looking great visually and in terms of a solid FPS. And so the decision was made to go with 30 frames per second on that game. I would be willing to bet that developers are going to put in some additional work to make their games run better on Switch 2 with more powerful, capable hardware. And that is yet another example of not only evergreen game sales, but also Nintendo having the opportunity to go back and really revisit some of their games and bring new life into them with higher FPS modes, higher resolution modes, and things for some classic games that are just getting started in their sales momentum. We will have to wait and see for sure how Nintendo handles their backwards compatibility and whether or not it has any kind of enhancements along with it, like you see with PS4 games when you run them on the PS5. Same thing goes for Xbox. You know, they have these visual patches and upgrades that come out over time that make these classic games look, run, feel, and play better. And I don't think there's a reason to suspect that Nintendo won't also investigate that same route. In the example of the slide that we used for the Legend of Zelda series, seeing Tears of the Kingdom rocket off to almost 20 million sales is great, but Breath of the Wild sold 30 over the lifetime, and Tears of the Kingdom still has plenty of time to continue to sell and surpass that. And especially if you have some kind of new Nintendo Switch version of the game come out where 4K is on the box, knowing that you can run it at that resolution, and 60 frames per second solid, everything is just tweaked out a little bit more. Not necessarily the remaster treatment, but everything just looks and feels a little bit better and smoother than it did on the original version. You could package that up and resell it again, or just sell the same base game but provide an update for it and advertise that that update is available and that it runs better on next gen or current gen Nintendo Switch hardware. Nintendo Switch 2 we will call it for the sake of the video. Obviously we don't know the name yet, but you get the idea. There's a ton of games that Nintendo could grab from their entire library of Nintendo Switch releases and give them a visual upgrade, and they are going to sell over the long-term life cycle of the next console, alongside of the library of games that we're going to learn about that we don't know about yet for this console. We don't know if Metroid Prime 4 is going to be a Switch 2 exclusive or if it will have a Switch version. It's likely that it'll come out on Switch. It might even be the big holiday 2024 title, and maybe we get a cross-generational release or maybe we don't, but that's another game that is going to start its sales cycle at the very tail end of the Nintendo Switch generation, and you would want to see some kind of support to have better visuals, to have 4K resolution, and have the game just looking at its best on next-gen hardware. And I think it's not only the consumer-friendly thing to do backwards compatibility so we can play all of our old games on the next-gen console, but it's also smart business for Nintendo with the long legs that they've created for their first-party library within the Nintendo Switch's life cycle. And you match that up with all of the reports we're seeing online around this new hardware suggesting that it is indeed a feature. You look at the slides that Nintendo has talked about in the past with Nintendo account rolling forward and value-added services with that. And I just think it's a foregone conclusion for Nintendo to have this thing day one and tout it up as a major feature. And who knows, the only thing we have to really worry about from it being implemented on a successful console like the Switch, and hopefully the follow-up to the Switch will be, well, you do have to worry a little bit about if Nintendo wants to sit on the evergreen sales for just too long. If you look at Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, that's essentially exactly what happened. We for almost certain would have seen another Mario Kart release on the Switch if that one didn't have the mass market appeal that it did. It's even why Nintendo decided to double down and give us the booster course pass for the game, as opposed to coming out with some kind of new edition at that point in the Switch's life cycle, because this was a Wii U game ported over to the Switch. It included the Wii U DLC from those tracks that were released during that time era in 2014, and it was packaged as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and now it goes on to sell over 60 million units. Like, Nintendo might see it continue to sell and be that day one pickup for their next gen console for new users that get into Nintendo's ecosystem. And do they sit on games potentially too long because of that? I don't necessarily worry about that too much, but it is definitely a conversation to be had. But that's where I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video. What do you think Nintendo's doing with backwards compatibility this time around? Are you like me and you're in the mindset of we will absolutely see this feature day one implemented into their next gen hardware, and that the leaks and rumors and reports around the system that we're seeing recently more or less confirm that? Or do you think there's a shot that we're all kind of shocked and Nintendo does drop the ball with backwards compatibility and you just have to say goodbye to all of the Switch library of games outside of maybe NSO going to this next generation hardware? I definitely don't think that will happen, but what do you think Nintendo's mindset is with this transition to their next gen hardware and the library of software that they built out over the Nintendo Switch's generation, and how will they capitalize on all of that? So thanks so much for watching the video today. Make sure you comment down below about all your thoughts and feelings, whether we agree or disagree on this backwards compatibility conversation. Also make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification on your way out, and I will see you guys next time.